Good evening. Tonight I'm going to ask Councilmember Bill Lust to lead us in our invocation.
Let us pray. Oh God, we ask your blessing upon the Milton City Council. Use it, we pray, to open our eyes to your glory and to the opportunities that lie before us to serve thee and our city. Grant that the members of the Milton City Council may be both wise and daring. Stir up in us the will to share joyfully in the work of our city. In thy holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Wednesday, September 9th, 2009 to order. Will the city clerk please call the roll and make general announcements?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll be happy to call roll for the September 9th, 2009 regular meeting. However, I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Additionally, those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment either during the public hearings or during the call for public comment, we do require that you complete a public comment card prior to speaking on that item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in order that the speaker cards were received by City Clerk's staff prior to the meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization if applicable. When you hear the bell, you'll have 30 seconds to complete your remarks. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided, however, that they file a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization on a form that City Clerk staff will provide. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you would expect to receive yourself. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Present.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Julie Zonner Bailey.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Bert Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Tina D'Aversa.
Here.
Councilmember Alan Tart.
Here.
Thank you. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Good evening. Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Our first item is approval of the meeting agenda, agenda item number 09922.
Is there any items to be considered on that? Okay, do I have a motion and a second?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Second the motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Hewitt, second by Councilmember Lusk. Any discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay, next item is public comment. Public comment's a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not included for its own public hearing during today's meeting. There's no discussion on items on the consent agenda or the first presentation from the public or from the council. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember, this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name is called, please come forward and speak into the microphone, stating your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes for remarks. City clerk, do we have any public comment?
No, sir, no public comment.
Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Will the city clerk please sound the items?
Number one is approval of the August 10th, 2009 work session minutes, which is item number 09923. Number two is approval of the August 17th, 2009 regular meeting minutes, which is agenda item number 09924.
Okay. Do I have a motion and a second?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Councilmember D'Aversa, a second by Councilmember Thurman.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay. There's no items under reports of presentation, so I'm going to move on to the public hearings. Will the city clerk please sound the first item?
Our first public hearing is a public hearing on an ordinance to adopt adjustments to the fiscal 2009 budget for each fund of the City of Milton, Georgia. Ms. Stacy Inglis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As we near the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th, there are additional adjustments that need to be made to the budget based on activity to date and projections. The recommended amendments reflect an increase to the general fund budget of $32,320. The most significant changes to revenue sources are as follows. There's an increase in each of the following accounts. In prior year property tax collection, an increase of $163,000. In intangible tax, there's an increase of $45,000. Penalties and interest on property tax, there's an increase of $20,000. And in traffic fines, there's an increase of $30,000. We have created a new line item to account for Hopewell Youth Association fees, which are currently totaling $25,670. We've also created a new line item to account for an operating transfer in from the Capital Projects Fund of $17,000. And this was a transfer out of the Park Improvements account in the Capital Projects Fund for the survey and appraisal services that were performed on the parks and community buildings. In motor vehicle taxes, they are trending lower than anticipated for the fiscal year 2009, and so there's a recommended decrease of $30,000. And then lastly, there's a decrease of a little over $283,000 for property taxes due to the late billing. We still have not received a tax digest from the county, waiting for that any day now. The required amendments for the departmental expenditures are as follows. There's a recommended decrease in the Mayor and Council Department and an offsetting increase in the City Manager's Department of $14,746. It's needed to transfer the executive aide position out of the Mayor and Council Department and into the City Manager's Department. This is just bookkeeping. The General Administration Department was created in fiscal year 2009 to account for the cost of the lump sum contract for finance, HR, public information, and marketing. In order to remain uniform with prior years, we're recommending that the general administration be divided up into the proper departments. There's a decrease of a little over $2.3 million in general admin and an offsetting increase of $1.5 in finance, $342,000 in HR, and $514,000 in public information and marketing. There's a recommended increase in municipal court to bring the salaries account in line with the actuals. The increase is a little $15,320. In Parks and Recreation, there's an increase of $17,000 to account for the survey and appraisal services that were performed on parks and community buildings. Again, as mentioned previously, this was a transfer. The offset is a transfer in from the Capital Projects Fund. That's it for the general fund. In the Special Events Fund, there's a recommended increase of $6,400 to account for donations received for the Milton Roundup. The Confiscated Assets Fund, there's a recommended increase of $43,763 to account for the portion of money obtained through a drug seizure. In the Capital Projects Fund, there's a recommended decrease of $108,582, and the adjustments are as follows. Since this fund is budgeted on a project length basis, the budget balance for active projects is carried over into the new fiscal year. At the beginning of fiscal year 2009, remaining balances from FY 2008 were input into the system before the year was officially closed. Prior year expenditures were still being booked that decreased the budget balance, but it didn't reflect in the FY 2009 budget numbers. To correct this problem, there's an accumulative decrease of approximately $42,000. One of our police vehicles was recently damaged, and there's an increase in new vehicles to account for the purchase of a replacement vehicle of $20,500. The budget for the Crabapple study should be in the Capital Grant Fund and lumped in with the Transportation Master Plan. So there is a transfer of $70,000 out of the Capital Projects Fund and into the Capital Grant Fund. And as mentioned previously, $17,000 is being transferred out of this fund in the Park Improvements line item over into the general fund to account for the expense of the survey and appraisals done on parks and community buildings. And this concludes all of the budget amendments needed right now.
Do we have any public comment on this item?
No public comments, sir.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and then ask if our Council has any questions for Ms. Inglis? Okay. City Clerk, please sound the next item.
Our second public hearing is a public hearing on an ordinance to adopt the fiscal 2010 budget for each fund of the City of Milton, Georgia. Mr. City Manager?
Mayor, Council, good evening. This will be the first of two public hearings on the fiscal 10 budget. We're going to give you a fairly high-level overview tonight just to get your brain starting to think about what we need to do over the next couple of weeks. There will be an opportunity to dig into the nitty-gritty of this budget at potentially two other times between now and when it gets adopted. I'll ask during staff reports after the presentation today, so be thinking about it. I'll ask during staff reports if you want to have a budget workshop next week on Monday. It has been advertised in an if-needed capacity, so I will get your direction after we talk tonight as to whether or not you think that's appropriate. And then from there will be a second public hearing as well as a more thorough presentation and thorough discussion when the item is before you in unfinished business as opposed to first presentation, which is where it is tonight. I can tell you that our budget preparation has taken several months. This isn't something we just started last week. We did a very thorough, in my estimation, budget package to provide to you. We started with formulating work plans for each of the specific departments in the city. Working from that work plan, we entertained both maintenance and operating requests, capital requests, as well as maintenance and operating type initiative requests from each of the departments, and went through a process that we prioritized those based on the needs of the city and what we felt was appropriate for the next fiscal year to continue to deliver service to our citizens. Keeping that in mind, this has been through and through several processes. I can tell you that there were way more requests from the department heads this year than we had any ability to fund. One of these years, and maybe it'll never happen in my career, there's going to be less requests than we have money, but I'm not thinking that's going to happen anytime soon. So keeping that in mind, we kept the core values in putting this budget together as we have in previous budgets, that our first priority was to sustain existing services, to look at how we could potentially enhance services through operating initiatives, and then how we maintain the quality of life for our citizens by doing some type of capital programming, and those traditionally end up in some type of infrastructure, either maintenance and repair or infrastructure enhancement. Keeping that in mind, I'll walk through just briefly where we are with regard to our top 5 general fund revenue areas. Property tax obviously is there as number 1, local option sales tax number 2, franchise fees, insurance premium tax, and business and occupation tax closing out number 3, 4, and 5. Top 5 expenditures, which I don't think are any shock to anybody, and they are in line with previous years. Fire number 1, police number 2, public works number 3, which is pretty traditional. Those are the 3 that really deal with the safety of our citizens, and that typically happens that way. Other financing uses in community development. I can tell you as we go through the budget this year, you will see, whereas last year we had a public safety department and there were 4 specific cost centers for public safety. There was a public safety administration, there was police services, fire services, as well as EMS. That's been modified this year to have 3 specific cost areas because we now have split that department in half and have a police department and a fire department, so there's no longer a public safety admin cost center. So when you start to compare, if you were to compare police and fire last year, or public safety, I'll call it last year, versus police and fire and EMS this year, just know that if it looks as though police has had an increase and fire has had an increase, what you need to make sure you look at is that there is also the decrease of the public safety admin. And actually requests this year, kind of keeping in line with our trend in revenues, are really flat over last year in those areas, even though you might see an increase. If you were to take the total, you would see that the increases were that the requests were in line with what was budgeted last year. To work through salary and benefits, and as well as some of the other things that are employee-based and employee-focused, we have total salary and benefit cost in this budget at $6.737 million. The benefits being $1.784749 of that, which represents a 27% average of benefit cost to salary, which is in line with where we were. In fact, last year, one of the things that is in this first budget, and one of the things that is kind of open for your consideration, is whether or not we want to follow this year. And in my estimation, my recommendation is that we do if we can. If we follow through with some type of cost of living adjustment for our employee, albeit modest. I think we definitely need to be modest this year in a time when revenues are flat at best. I also am ever mindful of the fact that it costs a whole lot more money to recruit employees than it does to retain happy employees. And keeping that balance is very, very, very important. This is kind of the position that we were in last year. This initially balanced budget that you're presented does, in fact, have that in there. And we can certainly look towards what your thoughts are with respect to that as we have discussions. Contract costs for the public-private partnership is budgeted in this budget at $5.515 million. You'll see in the notes that later on in the meeting, if we elect to move forward with transitioning some of those services to city positions, that there will be an opportunity to use those revenues in either capacity, whether or not it is to pay for a portion of a contract or whether or not it is to perform that service on an in-house type basis. So we'll get into more detail with that. Maybe not tonight, but we will certainly get into more detail on that when we have the more thorough discussion on the budget within the next couple meetings. Mayor and council salary shows a total overall decrease of 36%. Much of that is because for our bookkeeping and really managing the staff that's here in the building, we did in fact move, like you just heard in the 09 request, and we kept it consistent in the 010, move the executive aide position just from a cost perspective out of the city council's budget into the city manager's budget. That gives me the ability to manage it on a day-to-day basis a little bit easier in managing that particular line item in the budget. Outside of that, as you work into the city manager's budget, you will see that the position that we all know Matt Marietta to be in at this point today has been moved. That position that he is in at this point has been moved back into the fire service, and I'll explain how that's going to work here in just a couple minutes. We are not going to have any decreased level of service. We're just going to try to do more with what we have and the talent that we have existing on our staff. We're going to try to multi-hat some people that goes along with their skill set as opposed to having them in one specific area. City clerk's office and the finance department, really no notable changes over this year. We do go through and list exactly what positions are in each of those two areas, and those should be fairly straightforward to you if you're following along with me in this transmittal letter. We have a city clerk, a deputy city clerk, and a records clerk in the clerk's office, as well as a finance director, budget procurement coordinator, accountant, disbursement coordinator, and 2 revenue specialists in the finance department. Legal department, legal services are provided through a contractual relationship with Gerard and Davis LLP. Based on our trends at this point and in the spirit of being conservative in an initial budget request, we have budgeted at this point $200,000 for legal services for fiscal year 10. That represents a fairly conservative figure. I don't know that we'll necessarily reach that this year. That's really driven by what is happening at the time. And without going into certain items that would be subject to our executive session protection, anytime that we are defending litigation or pursuing litigation, obviously there's a correlation between our legal fees and that action. Information technology, there is one actually an initiative request in IT this year, and that is to upgrade the network bandwidth between our facility here and the City of Alphareta's dispatch center. This is just an enhancement, a very modest enhancement that will allow the in-car and in-fire truck computers to operate at the speed that they need to operate to have the data actually transfer from the dispatch center to the unit in the field. Human resources, we have 2 positions in that budget. That is a position, and those are 2 positions that will transition to the City of Milton on October the 1st. Those are not positions that are contemplated in the $5.51 million contract that I talked about earlier. So regardless of what direction we go with the contract this year, those are positions that will become part of the city's staff beginning October the 1st. Communications, as it was previously termed, has been moved into a cost center called Public Information and Marketing. I think that just more accurately reflects what's going on in that department at this point, and really no change there. Municipal Court, another place that there's really not a large change in this year over last year. Public Safety Department is where we get into a couple of recommended changes, and I'd like to explain those to you. Starting with our Police Department, as you can see, we have a list of staff that exists today in the Police Department. We are recommending, and I am recommending, that we do look at a couple of operating initiative changes in the Police Department. When you take our call volume as the Police Department exists today and put it against, and we'll be happy to do this for you at the meeting of the 21st, we can put it against several of the different nationally accepted standards for staffing that exist, to show that our police department is just staffed at a level that is less than it should be for a call volume that exists today. It is completely data-driven. It doesn't put a lot of hunches in there. The IACP, which is the International Association of Chiefs of Police, have one of the more comprehensive data-driven staffing analysis products. And when you look at where we are versus what we should have in the police department staffing, every time we put the data in there, it shows that we need 6 people more than we have. I'd love to sit here tonight and say that I found enough in the budget that I could say I think we can bring that police department staffing to where it needs to be. I can't do that, nor would that be necessarily appropriate to do at this point based on the revenues where they are, although I would like to start cracking that egg. In this fiscal year, this budget that you're being presented with includes 2 additional police officers. 2 of those 6 that are called for. I hope that over the next several fiscal years we can address our needs there and bring the level of staffing up to where it matches some of the standards that exist professionally across the United States. One other thing that is funded and is requested in this balanced budget, and certainly open for our discussion, is the inclusion of a crime prevention person in the police department. I think we have seen, and I think we have had repeated requests for somebody that does more than just is always tied to a radio and responds to the 911 call when the 911 call happens. And candidly, there's a lot more to police work than that. But there's a lot more to police work, and it's in direct correlation to how we can provide the right person that can do some of those outreach activities that police departments are known for. Just because they're not responding to 911 calls does not mean that they're not reducing crime. And in some circumstances, people in those positions are more effective in reducing crime, although in many circumstances it's intangible, because they might speak to a neighborhood watch group or they might speak to a homeowners association, and they might change a behavior and attitude that all of a sudden causes a car not to get broken into. And how do you know if they have influenced somebody or not, other than we look over time and see if we have had over time decrease in crime in certain areas. So those are both in this balanced budget, those 3 people, and I'd certainly ask for your consideration in enhancing our ability to serve our citizens through the police department. One thing that you'll see in here, and this is really just a carryover from last year, was something we elected not to fund or not to deliver last year, was a narcotics detective. Part of that was because we needed to do some additional research and figure out what exactly the possibilities were for a revenue-neutral type position. Now, understand that if we were to fund that narcotics detective position, we cannot use something that would be in the confiscated assets fund to fund that person's salary. But there are certain things that we can purchase in the confiscated assets fund that we otherwise would have to purchase out of the general fund or from capital dollars. So that, for all intents and purposes, through appropriate budgeting, becomes truly a kind of a cost-neutral endeavor, and also really enhances our ability to perform some of those narcotic-type investigations at here local level. One of the other things we've asked for, again, another fairly modest funding area, is to extend the warranty on our computers that exist in the police department. That is a better way, in our estimation, of making sure that we keep good equipment that's operating without having to worry about things breaking and having to replace them at their true value. Of course, there is a little bit of a risk there, and the risk is that if we don't have $8,000 worth of breakage, we should have not extended the warranty, and we should have just paid for things as they break. There is that risk there, although I think the risk to do that I think we're better off by funding an extended warranty than we are by just taking our chances on that particular equipment. Moving into the fire department, there is no request this year for increase in people in the fire department. A couple of items and initiatives that I think I have heard the council support that I wanted to bring forward, especially number one, which is to continue to implement the Heart Ready City program that increases the public education. And you've heard about that in several previous meetings, so I won't go into what that particular program does. But that is one thing that we are asking to be funded. The second two items in the fire department that we're asking to be funded this year in initiative format deal with firefighter safety. The first one is some things that deal with, and you can get a much better description of this in a couple of weeks from the fire chief, but he tells me that if a firefighter gets into a house or a building and he needs or she needs to be able to get out in a hurry, we need to have the ability to help them get out of situations that they otherwise might not be able to get out, which is what these 23 RIT rescue harnesses do. It deals with search and rescue. I'll let him explain in more detail what that means because I will do a terrible job. I can tell you on that item we did apply for a grant as our first mechanism for funding that. That grant was not funded. The second item is to purchase and install 4 exhaust extractor systems in the fire bays. Again, this is a firefighter safety issue over time dealing with the exhaust emissions from diesel fire trucks. This one we still do have a pending grant application out. So to sit here tonight, I would say this is something that would enhance our firefighter safety, but there may be funding for this particular item at some point in the future. We just don't know at this point. Certainly if that grant were to fund, we could reallocate those funds in a different fashion. EMS services, again, are provided through a contractual agreement with Rural Metro, and that annual contract cost is $132,250. That shouldn't represent much of a change from last year. Public Works, there are a couple of operating initiatives that I would like the council to consider in Public Works in addition to the staffing that's required in Public Works. And number one is the partnering with the City of Roswell by way of a use agreement that allows Milton residents to utilize their recycling facility. I think that's something of value and important for us to participate in. I'd also like to fund and support some type of a volunteer cleanup initiative again this year. Last year that initiative was successful, and I'd like to be able to fund either at a different location or the same location doing it again, but I'd like to fund, ask you to fund something that allows for one of those events to occur, as well as some additional overhead trimming of trees and bushes in the city's right-of-ways and areas that we just need to get some overgrowth back out of our right-of-way. Parks and Recreation is something that we will be taking over October the 1st. The budget that you've been presented does, in fact, include a Public Works manager, a Public Works director, somebody to lead our Parks and Rec. A Parks and Rec manager, that funding is included in this balanced budget. That is an enhancement over last year. Last year, if you recall, we had a contractual agreement where we had somebody for a period of time at a contract cost of $30,000. This goes well beyond that to be able to actually place somebody in that position and bring Milton forward to the next level as we work through planning process, service delivery process, and all those other things that go along with Parks and Recreation. So that is funded for the entire fiscal year in this budget proposal. Community development with the staff, and I don't need to sit here and read it off, but the staff that exists today, not many changes in the community development department with regard to operating initiatives other than to keep the staffing similar to where it is presently and allow that department to continue to function. Some other budgeted expenditures which are non-departmental, and I'll just read through these for the purpose of getting them out to the public. Property and liability insurance in the amount of $192,252. City Hall lease and building maintenance totaling $482,415. We have budgeted the third of 5 annual lease payments that was associated with the initial purchase of our equipment when we deployed. We do have the required budgetary policy for the city. The 1% contingency is included in this budget. An interfund transfer of $1.16 million out of the general fund and into the capital project fund to pay for the recommended capital improvements, which we'll get to here shortly. An interfund transfer of $178,000 out of the general fund into the capital grant fund in order to fund the match for the intersection improvements of Birmingham at Providence and Arnold Mill at New Providence. and an interfund transfer of $32,596 out of the general fund and into the operating grant fund in order to pay for the match for the safer positions that we continue to have this year in the fire department. We look through some of the capital things that we are requesting this year. Again, we looked at what was necessary for the city to continue safe deployment of services to its citizens, to maintain our infrastructure in a manner that it doesn't deteriorate beyond the level that we can keep it at least moving forward. That's difficult to do sometimes when you have as many miles of roads as we have, and some responsibility for some bridges and some other things that need some pretty substantial work. So this was not an easy process to go through the capital budget and figure out what in this fiscal 10 year keeps us moving forward with those mindsets, but that we can actually afford. A couple of the things that I think are appropriate. The first one, which we can get a better description for you at the 21st, because I can barely say the word, is color orthophotography and LiDAR. This is overhead imagery. This is imagery that works along with our GIS. This is a endeavor that has been taken on by not just the city of Milton, but we have an opportunity to engage with other North Fulton cities in a larger process at a much reduced price, very potentially by doing this, which is why typically when I would be looking at something and saying, do we need that to be able to continue to provide safe services to our citizens, or do we need that to keep our infrastructure strong? I would routinely say, well, no, that probably doesn't make the list because we're fairly good today. But I can tell you every once in a while you sometimes have to make a decision and say, well, is it worth funding it this year? Because next year if I had to fund it, it would cost me 5 times what it cost this year. And that is the mindset that was used behind allowing that to proceed in the capital budget. There's capital requests as well as vehicle replacement at this point for our police cars. As you know, we have a fleet that is all about 3 years old. It's an aging fleet, and it's not a fleet that will be with us forever, so we need to make plans now to be able to account for when that fleet ages, and we need to start doing some replacement. The other thing that we have been notified about that will happen during this fiscal year is we will finally, and I'm excited to say finally, it's not certainly a shock to us, we really want it to happen, is we will be visited by ISO during summer of next year for the city's first ever ISO rating as it relates to the fire department. The reason I say I'm excited about that is because we really need to get a baseline as the city of Milton for where we stand with regard to that ISO rating. Presently today we still carry the same rating that we had when we were Fulton County, and that is simply because we have to have 3 years worth of data before they can come evaluate us. And even if we jumped up and down and said, hey, come look at us, they won't come look at us until the summer of 2010. So we are anxiously awaiting that. One of the things that we really strongly need to look at to make sure that we fare well with that ISO rating is, again, to look in our fire service and recognize, if nothing else, the fact that we have 4 fire stations and we have 4 fire trucks. We also have 4 fire trucks that are now out of warranty, the warranty that we have had the luxury of having for the first couple years of being the city of Milton. When fire trucks break, they don't. You just don't get to go to the express oil change and get a new oil filter and you're back on the road. When a fire truck breaks, it routinely requires somebody actually come from somewhere into the field to perform the maintenance that's required, typically in the fire station. What that means to us today, although we are slightly enhanced because of our relationship with the city of Alpharetta and them because of us, means that that piece of fire equipment comes out of service for the period of time that it takes to repair it. As these apparatus get more hours on them, as they get more miles on them, the length of time that they remain out of service or could remain out of service increases. That's just the nature of having something mechanical. As it gets older, it spends less time in service. We have budgeted in this particular budget a first-year lease payment for a reserve apparatus. Now, that doesn't mean that we would go out and look and buy something and have it sit in a fire station until we needed it and then put it in service. This would be something that we would, for the first time in the city of Milton, recognizing that we're now 3 years over, we would start to create a revolving fleet in the fire service, just like we do in the police service, so that we are not in a position forever that all of our equipment expires at the same time because they were all purchased at the same time. This would likely be a piece of apparatus that would come in and become a first-level piece of apparatus, and we would take one that had some hours already on it and put it into a reserve status so we can start to control for some of that spacing out of aging of our equipment. In Public Works, we've I've got listed here the continue the pavement management program at $500,000. Continue to fund the restriping of roads at $25,000. Continue to fund traffic calming measures at $25,000. One of the big ones we were hit with this year is there's the strong likelihood that we will have to replace or repair 2 bridges in the city of Milton this year, both Landrum Road as well as the Cogburn Road Bridge. That's a pretty steep financial hit at $675,000. That is included in the capital projects. As well as to continue to fund the MPDES permit compliance program. Now, that is something that we need to do because that is a mandate. That's something that we've done this year and something that we need to do continue going forward. If you flip to the last page, here I've told you about all the things that I think we want to do in this budget year. There's one place in this budget that in order to do some of this stuff, it wasn't as though we just were able to find money in this budget everywhere. Doing some of this stuff puts priority on some of those public safety issues, but in fact does require, at least in the short term, that we look towards the capital budget that we have at this point and decrease in one particular area that, to me and to the staff, as we were looking at where we could potentially decrease to start to fund some of these safety issues, where could we do that and where would it have the least impact? As you know, as it exists today, we have about $1.5 million that is in some type of a land acquisition line. And in order to fund this budget and get it balanced, we had to look at that line and say, could we better allocate any of that 1.5 in the short term, 1.5 million in the short term, to be able to fund some of the safety initiatives. And in this request, that's what it does require. It does show that there is a $500,000 deduction in land acquisition, leaving just north of $1 million in land acquisition in the city's capital budget. So from a perspective of saying, there's $1.5 million there and I really need $2 million, we're certainly not in that capacity. That's something that's open for the council's discussion. If, in fact, we want to leave all of that money in that land acquisition line, then we have to go to other places of initiatives in capital and figure out where we cut $500,000. That's one of those things that it certainly doesn't deplete our position where we stand today. I knew I couldn't get through a whole budget presentation in this fiscal year, unfortunately, without having some bad news to deliver, and that's just a sign of where we are at this point in this time in this economy where we're seeing revenues stay flat to slightly decreasing. Some of that comes with bad news occasionally and how we can potentially find ways to allocate money in areas that need it now in hopes that we can repay and refund, which I'm confident that we can do. And as a matter of fact, that's in the document, that when we find money that we can repay and refund that's certainly where it would go. All right, I either need to get some more water or I'm going to stop talking. That is a preliminary budget proposal for you for this year for fiscal year 10. Again, this is the first night, which means it's more of an overview for you all and an overview for the public. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you if you want to conduct the public hearing.
Okay. Do we have any public comment?
No public comments, sir.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing on this item and then ask our council, is there any questions for our city manager on this? Go ahead, Karen Thurman.
Can we get a full copy of the budget? It was not included.
It was, and I was going to survey you all tonight. This is in the spirit of trying to save money, because to do a budget book, it's on your disc that's in your budget book. I know some of you like discs. I know some of you like paper. And I was going to survey you tonight. It costs about $50 a book to do the printing because of the volume of this budget document. If of the 7 of you, you'll just tell me yes or no you want a book, I'll have code enforcement deliver you a book tomorrow. If you elect for a book, if you'd rather view it on the disc that was provided to you in your packet, you can do it there as well.
Is that what was provided tonight?
Yes, it's on the disc that was in your packet.
It, just in the future, Chris' recommendation would be to let us know it's on the disc, because we've gotten accustomed to having been back with the paper copy.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Sorry.
Don't feel
It's on the
bad.
disc.
Don't
I'm
do-
sorry.
And we didn't look at it.
Don't feel bad. The mayor didn't know it either.
Yeah.
Chris had to tell me that.
So I think collectively, we were trying to figure out if you knew we didn't have a copy, but
Well, I knew you didn't have a paper copy because we were going to ask tonight as to who wanted paper copies. I just didn't want to spend that money to have a paper copy for you to put on a shelf and not use it. So I guess if I could get kind of a head shake of who wants paper, we'll have it to you delivered tomorrow by code enforcement. If you'd rather have it on the disc, now you know where it is. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm fine.
I've got it right here on the disc. I'm fine.
You're good? Disc? Would anybody like paper?
Equal
Okay.
disc.
Good enough.
And just to let you know too, on the disc, the program itself, there's a bookmarking feature on there that you can open up the bookmark and it'll take you to the different sections.
And in the past, we've also been able to make notations. Does the software also allow us to do that, where we can actually, as we're going through it, continue to make those notations? That has not changed.
I believe so. If you have the newest version of Adobe Reader, I think that you can make comments in there.
I've been able to. I just wanted to make sure that
Okay.
that I wasn't presuming that, because that's has been
Should be able
it's
to.
been a very helpful tool, and I think especially with our new laptops, that continues to be available.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Yes, sir.
We'll move on to the first presentation. The city clerk, please sound the item.
Number one is ZM09-02, which is west side of Birmingham Highway, SR 372, land lots 1096, 1098, 1135 of the second district, second section, Brayburn subdivision by John Whelan Homes and Neighborhoods Incorporated, represented by William Woodson Galloway of Dillard and Galloway LLC. A request to modify the following conditions. Number one, to modify condition 1D, which currently allows up to 54 townhomes at a maximum density of 0.86 dwellings units per acre, to allow up to 38 townhomes at a maximum density of 0.61 dwelling units per acre based on total acreage zoned. Item number two, to modify 1E, which currently allows up to 45 single-family residential units at a maximum density of 0.72 dwelling units per acre, to allow up to 61 single-family residential units at a maximum density of 0.98 dwelling units per acre based on total acreage zone. 3, to modify the required minimum lot size in condition 1F from 18,900 square feet such that no more than 15 lots shall have a minimum lot size of 10,890 square feet, approximately 1/4 acre, or above. At least 3 lots, lots 11 through 13, shall have a minimum lot size of 1 acre or above, and the remaining lots shall have a minimum lot size of 14,500 square feet, approximately 1/3 of an acre or above. Number 4, to modify condition 2A to replace the revised site plan received by the Fulton County Department of Environment and Community Development on June 7, 2006, with revised site plan received by the Milton Department of Community Development on July 7, 2009. Number 5, to modify condition 3E to reduce the 15-foot building separation to a 10-foot building separation with a 5-foot side yard setback for lots less than 1 acre. This is agenda item number 09925. The second item on first presentation is RZ 09-04, an ordinance to create Article 13 of the Milton zoning ordinance to establish a historic preservation commission in the city of Milton to provide for the designation of historic properties or historic districts, to provide for issuance of certificates of appropriateness, to provide for an appeals procedure, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes. Agenda item number 09926. Item 3, approval of an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Milton, Georgia, to adopt amendments to the fiscal 2009 budget for each fund of the city of Milton, Georgia, amending the amounts shown in each budget as expenditures, amending the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. Agenda item number 09927. Item 4 is approval of an ordinance of the mayor and council of the city of Milton, Georgia, to adopt the fiscal 10 budget for each fund of the city of Milton, Georgia, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the several items of revenue anticipations, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures to exceed actual funding available. That's item number 09928.
Okay, do I have a motion and a second?
I move to approve the first presentation items.
Second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Tart, second by Councilmember DeVersa.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay, there's no zoning items on the agenda tonight. So I'm going to move on to unfinished business. Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Approval of an ordinance amending the rules of procedure for the city council meetings and public hearings for the city of Milton. First reading, first presentation on August 17, 2009, agenda item number 09915. Mr. Mayor and Council, this is an amendment to the rules of procedure as stated. This will be the fourth amendment to the rules. Drawing your attention to section 16, which is decorum. There was an error brought to our attention, and reading the last sentence, it says a second is not required, and then we would like our proposed change to be the mayor is authorized to unilaterally rule on the question, or in the mayor's discretion, the question can be presented to the full council for debate and be decided via majority vote. Are there any questions on that change?
Hearing
Thank
no
you.
questions, do I have a motion and a second?
I move to approve an ordinance amending the rules of procedure for city council meetings and public hearings for the city of Milton as explained by staff. Agenda item number 09915.
Second the motion.
A motion by Councilmember Tartt, second by Councilmember Lusk. Any discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay, moving on to new business. Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Mr. Mayor, the item under new business, agenda item number 09929, is approval of a resolution to authorize the mayor to sign a notice of intent to terminate the city's agreement with CH2M Hill. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and Council, before I start the presentation, which will be brief, I think I walked up and passed out to everybody a substitution letter that would be recommended by the staff tonight for your consideration as opposed to the one that published in the package. In summary, it is a similar document, although it has some additional wording in it that more accurately, I believe, reflects what we are trying to convey in this particular notice. It is up for your consideration tonight whether or not you have any interest in providing this contractual required notice to officially end or provide notice of ending the contract as it exists and in the format that it exists presently. We have had several discussions and much discussion over this topic, and I don't know that it's necessarily one of those things we wanted to get into a whole lot of detail with, other than this is just simply kind of a trigger mechanism that causes us to provide the contractually required notice that is called for in a contract. The reason this is before the council is because you all were the ones that entered into a contract initially, and therefore to exercise a clause that's in the contract is something that needs to come back before the council for you all to act on. I say all that to say that if, in fact, you elect that this is the direction that the city should go at this point, and this is the direction that we want to go at this point, I must say, and I want to say publicly, that this is certainly a relationship that we have with CH2M Hill at this point continues to be very positive. I don't want anybody to think that it is not positive. We are working together as partners to move to a different model potentially, and that we certainly have a lot of respect for and appreciate the service that they have provided the city of Milton since December the 1st, 2006. I don't want this to, in any circumstance, be considered a negative act tonight, just potentially a different direction or a different act for the city. That having been said, I'll answer any questions if you have them, but in summary, again, all you're doing tonight is acting, if you approve this, is to move forward with one of the requirements of the contract.
And I'd just like to add for questions that, as Chris said, and legally per our existing contract we're in, this will basically just, per the contract, trigger us to authorize, or it'll allow us to transition some or all of our services during the next contract that we enter into with CH, as far as whether we do them in-house or contract with CH or someone else. So with that, I'll open it up to questions if there is any. Julie?
I think I know the answer, but if you would just confirm that our city attorney has reviewed this in connection with, obviously, the existing contract, but also with the variables that we've talked about in terms of this period of transition, and whether or not the language that's presented to us this evening allows for the variety of options that have been discussed, including transition either sooner or up to those 180 days. And that we also have the flexibility within that to be able to modify the cost of those transition services.
Without, I guess I'll answer for him. Yes. And in fact, he's the city attorney is the author of this letter.
I just wanted to verify that.
Except for the typo on the first paragraph where there's an I missing in compliment. But other than that,
You can blame that one on me.
Okay. To Bill?
Just a clarification on the 180-day notice period. Will that actually begin on October 1st, or?
That is correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else questions?
Mayor,
Councilmember Thurman?
assuming this is approved tonight, then obviously our budget is changed greatly going forward. Will you be getting us a copy of a revised budget? And does it have, what impact does it have on what will be before us at the next meeting and the 2 public hearings for approval?
Well, I don't necessarily think that if you approve this tonight, there's going to be anything different in front of you with regard to the budget over the next couple of meetings. And part of that is because we're in one of those requirements that our fiscal year is October to September, as you all know. We have to have something adopted to continue to perform business with on October the 1st. This is one of those years that if it results in the transition of some or potentially all of the services to a different type of model, we go into that with our eyes wide open, knowing that we are going to require a fairly substantial, not necessarily from a money perspective, but from a bookkeeping perspective, a fairly substantial budget modification. I don't know that there's any way to predict that at the beginning of the fiscal year, and I think we need to adopt, in my opinion, we need to adopt a budget that matches what we are performing at the time that we're performing it and modify that as we move through that period of 6 months. Does that answer your question?
So when do you expect a budget amendment? I know we usually have them 2 or 3 times a year. When would you expect a budget amendment that would more accurately reflect the changes of self-performing some of this?
Well, I think what you'll see is regular updates as to where we are. I don't want to give you a date and say I'd expect a budget amendment on a certain day. I believe that you will receive regular updates as we work through this process, but I'd like to keep it to where we actually do one more substantial budget amendment than a bunch of small ones, simply because modifying the budget is such an intense process. Without going out on a limb, I would say if we have the period between October 1 and April 1, that shortly after that April 1 expiration, potentially sooner, is when you would see a budget amendment.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Okay. Do I have a motion and a second?
I'd like to make a motion to approve a resolution to authorize the mayor to sign a notice of intent to terminate the city's agreement with CH2M Hill, agenda item number 09-929.
I'll second that.
A motion by Councilmember Tartt, second by Councilmember D'Aversa. Any discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
The city clerk, please sound the next item.
Approval of a resolution appointing Stacy Inglis as city treasurer for the city of Milton, Georgia, effective September 9th, 2009. Item number 09930. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor and Council, very quickly on this agenda item, as you were aware, because of some procedural issues, we have had on record that I have been the acting city treasurer for a period of almost 2 years. We have now very capable staff that is a city employee, very professional in having Stacy with us, and she's certainly qualified, more than qualified to function as the city's treasurer, and I would ask that you approve that resolution to officially make that change, and I can give that one away.
Is there any questions for Chris on that? Just want to thank you for being our treasurer.
You're really going to miss that, aren't you?
Okay, do I have a motion and a second?
I'd like to make a motion for the approval of a resolution appointing Stacy Inglis as city treasurer for the city of Milton, Georgia, effective September 9th, 2009, agenda item number 09930.
I'll second it.
I'm going to have a motion by Councilmember Hewitt, second by Councilmember Thurman. Any discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Will City Clerk, please say on the next item.
Approval of a resolution creating city positions identified as essential to providing professional and efficient government services to the citizens of Milton. Item number 09931. Matt Marietta?
I'm actually going to handle this one, I think.
Another hat for you?
Sure. No. Mayor and Council, again, this is something reasonably procedural based on the item that you just handled in item number 1. This was one that if you had approved item number 1, we were going to leave on the agenda. If you had not, we were going to take this item off. After consulting with our city attorney, one of the requirements of the charter is that the mayor and council has the authority to create positions within the city of Milton, and the city manager's responsibility as it relates to personnel picks up at a different level, and that I don't have, nor necessarily agree that I should have the authority to just create positions within the city, and that is you all's responsibility. What we have provided to you tonight is simply a mechanism to comply with the charter as it's required. My fear was that if you had authorized a letter which called for a transition potentially away from a contract, that I didn't want to be in a position where we hadn't taken the steps necessary to create those positions that would be required to continue to provide a level of service to our citizens in conformance with the charter. What I'm asking you to do tonight is to create these positions. I'm not asking you to attach funding to them. I'm not asking you to approve job descriptions that go with them. And just because they're there doesn't mean that they necessarily have funding attached to them in the budget. This truly is a procedural process to be able to comply with the charter, so that if, in fact, something were to happen to all of us tomorrow, that the city could continue to function, that you all have taken the steps that would allow somebody, whether that would be me or somebody else, to put people in place to continue to serve our citizens. That is simply what this agenda item is.
Questions for our city manager on this? Any questions for our attorney? Alan?
I just have one. The positions for, thank you, Mayor, the positions for the fire department, or actually it's the police department, that doesn't contemplate 2010. It's just where we are currently in 2009.
Correct.
Okay. All right, very good.
This is going to be something, that's a very good question. This is going to be something that we begin a new process in Milton where we will actually have this list considered as attachment A to the budget every year, so that we will have something that is, quote, enabling legislation, that if we ever needed to go back and say, when was that position created? So attached to Exhibit A to the fiscal 2010 budget, if you elect to fund those positions, those will then be included in the list. But as of today, in this list that I'm asking you to kind of approve in the interim, they're not included. This is a snapshot of as we exist today.
Is there any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Bill?
I'd like to make a motion for the approval of a resolution creating city positions identified as essential to providing professional and efficient government services to the citizens of Milton. Agenda item number 09931.
I'll second the motion.
A motion by Councilmember Lust, second by Councilmember Bailey. Is there any more discussion? Hearing none.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous.
Okay, I'm going to move on. Do I have any reports from council tonight? Julie?
I think that the city manager, Lagerblum, had suggested I just ask this question here. Earlier, when we were under first presentation, one of the items that I believe staff is recommending for deferral was presented on first presentation, and I just want to make sure that procedurally, as that proceeds with deferral, since this was now recommended or approved as a first presentation, since it's going back to the Planning Commission, and it's the Historic Preservation Ordinance that I'm referencing, I just want to make sure that we don't get caught later without appropriate advertising, so that we have all of those dates coordinated.
Our opinion tonight was, very, very good question. Our opinion tonight was that as it had been advertised, it needed to be sounded in first presentation. When it actually comes out of first presentation is when we will make a more official staff recommendation.
So just to be clear, it won't be coming on our next agenda. It is indeed going back to the Planning Commission, as that was their recommendation and staff's.
It will be sounded again at the next meeting with a staff recommendation, as you can see in the book here. There will be a staff recommendation for deferral. You all will have to elect to defer it at the next meeting. You could elect to approve it. You could elect to deny it. You could elect to defer it. But as it was advertised, we need to bring it forward with a staff recommendation, then you can either agree with us or go in a direction as a collective body.
But just to be clear, staff and the planning commission had recommended deferral. That's why I just want to make sure that we weren't at cross purposes in terms of what we had done this evening for the first presentation.
No, I agree with the city manager. I think that's procedurally the proper way to handle it, and then that will give the council the discretion to follow staff's recommendation.
Okay, thanks so much.
Okay. We'll move on to staff reports then. City manager.
Mayor, I've got a couple, and I'm done talking for the night. Got good news for you, and is our police chief in the audience? Does anybody see her? Okay, she's here. She's not going to like this because this is something good about the fire department. She always makes fun of me or makes fun of us when we say something good about our fire department. Our fire department did something awesome as it relates to what are they doing behind me? I'm going to have to watch this on. I'm going to have to watch this on videotape later. Our firefighters performed amazingly with their MDA boot drive this year. I just want to let you know that this year they raised more than they have ever raised in 6 days. In 6 days, the City of Milton firefighters raised $48,179.51. So totally now as a department, since the City of Milton has been here, we have raised $112,000 to help fight those neuromuscular diseases. Pretty amazing stuff. Nobody else in the Atlanta area gets close, although Johns Creek has threatened next year, but they won't get there. I don't know where the list is, but I looked at the list. Nobody was within, no one was close. They did a great job. We're scheduled for a budget workshop next Monday night, and it's advertised in an if-needed basis. I must tell you and want to tell you that I will not be at that work session next Monday night. This sounded good at the time and was something that kept me in conformance with the contract that I signed with you all, and that was to represent the City of Milton at the ICMA conference. Back when I signed up, it was really cheap to do that because I met all those pre-date stuff, and now that the time is upon us, I really wish I didn't necessarily or wasn't necessarily leaving town, although the cost of canceling was more than the cost of going, so I shortened my trip. And I really am looking forward to doing some networking with other city managers and getting some of that training. But that having been said, we have now wonderful technology in the City of Milton. They promised me that from my hotel room Monday night I will be able to watch that workshop as it occurs, and I'll probably be texting the mayor if I need to as things are happening. But you'll be left in Jeanette's very capable hands. She's going to run that meeting for us, and Stacy will certainly facilitate a discussion on the budget, and I will be there in spirit, hearing everything you have to say, and hopefully I won't be yelling at my computer screen. But it sounds to me as though you all want that to happen, and we're certainly prepared, ready to do that. I've also had some questions from a couple of council members. I'm just going to throw it out there, and I'm just going to tell you what at least I plan on doing at this point. I've had a couple of council members ask for a more official update as it relates to where we are with regard to sewer. I don't know that we necessarily have a tremendous update for you, but in consultation and in working with our city attorney, he and I will draft something that we will get out to each of you before week's end. I've got a pretty packed day tomorrow, but we can get to it on Friday to at least give you something of an idea as to where we are with respect to an update. And also where we are with regard to our negotiation for service delivery strategy with Fulton County. Both of those items are not really related, but semi-related in how one affects the other. Give me the opportunity to put some thought behind it before I just get in here and speak off the cuff, because I certainly wouldn't want to lead you astray. So let me put some thought into what actually I can provide as an update at this point, and we'll get you something just as soon as we can. I've been passed a note here that says, is Linda Blow providing an events update? And I will have to look and see if Linda Blow is in fact doing that. She is doing that. So let me see if she can give us an update on where we're going with both the Crabapple Antique and Art, did I get it right?
Yes,
Festival, as well as the Milton Roundup.
yes, and I'd love to give you an update. Good evening. The Crabapple Antique and Arts Fair is going forward on October 3rd, I think it is, the first Saturday in October, and Sally is working overtime on it, and everything is going well. In fact, she's full. She can't get any more vendors in anywhere, so It's going to be a good turnout. We are, and Lieutenant Borzi, I don't know if he's here, was with me last night at a roundup meeting, and we had the high school and the people who have organized and are managing the race, the mayor's inaugural race, along with the Milton Roundup Committee. And we worked out ingress and egress into Milton High School and Northwestern, and I think we've got pretty much everything in a row. We're getting the vendors. The vendors are coming in slower this year because of the economy and people not so willing to separate themselves from their money. So, but we're working on it. It's going to be great. We're hoping that we get through all these bumps and ups and downs and have a really good turnout. I'm working on the Christmas and Crabapple, which will be the first Saturday in December, and getting the details for that, the horse and buggy and the Santa and the photographer and everything. And also this year through I don't know if I dare say, a donation from Protect Milton. We're going to have a holiday tree planted here in Milton, and we haven't actually confirmed. I think I know where it will be, but until the tree goes in the ground, I better not say it's a 20-foot cedar. And the Protect Milton group has donated it, and we're just going to pay to dig the hole and plant it. So I'm now getting quotes from decorators, and if anybody wants to bring their ladder and decorate the tree, you can give me your quote, and I'm sure it'll be a lot less than the ones I'm getting. But, and we hope to establish that as a holiday event also. That's as far as I've gotten to that point, but it'll be on Highway 9 unless things get changed. So please come to the Crabapple event. Please come to the Milton event. We're going to have lots of things. The rides are bigger and better this year. We've blown a lot of our budget on the entertainment for the children, and which is, you know, if the kids want to come, Mom and Dad will have to bring them, and et cetera. And we've got the students doing a lot of the entertainment and lots of good things to eat, and T-shirts, always T-shirts. So is there anything I can answer for you?
You mentioned a tree. I didn't hear what kind of a tree you're going to have.
It's a cedar. It's a 20-foot cedar tree, and
I think it's a deodorant. Actually,
Thank you.
No, you said some other kind of a tree.
holiday.
Oh,
I have to be.
are we going to have a Christmas tree too?
It looks awfully like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
So since we can pray at the beginning of our meetings, I think we can say Christmas.
I think I'm under.
Just leave that one alone.
Leave
Linda.
that.
Okay. I was going to say
We do pray before the meeting.
nothing. I didn't understand what you were getting at. Oh, and I'm a little slow tonight.
Me?
Yeah, I should have realized. And also, we have the Veterans Day, and I'm going to talk with Mr. Lusk and see. Last year, we took a full spread of the inside of the Milton Herald and thanked all the veterans' names that we have, and whether we'll go that route or another way, I don't know. That's yet to be determined.
And we'll install markers along Deerfield Parkway.
Okay. I think that's it for now. I did have a status report that I put together for Chris just recently, and if, Ashley, I'll send it to you if you'd like to see it.
Do you know any of the groups that, I mean, what groups are represented from Milton High School that are participating in the roundup? Or do you know what the lineup is?
Not yet. We finally found someone. It's a drama teacher. She's not teaching right now, I don't think. but we have her, and she's putting the program together. I know that there's an improv group from Milton High School participating. I know that the band is going to come out, the whole marching band, around 2 or 2:30, we're hoping, and be on the front steps of the school and play. I know that we're having Jason Cantrell and whoever, that's our public safety department, have been practicing like crazy. They're going to play a few songs. So there's going to be all types of entertainment, and we're really focusing on the schools being the entertainment. So hopefully I'll have more to report, and who knows, maybe we'll find some stars among us. I don't know.
I know I got a contact from Lauren Holmes.
Yes.
And so she reached out to gather some additional information for contacts for people. So I hope to see all those young folks out there.
Absolutely.
That sounds awesome.
That's what it's all about. So,
Julie, you have a question?
Yes, I was just going to say that as you're providing contacts for Milton, I'd be happy to give you the contact for the choir there, because they are a very recognized choir at Milton, as well as there's a choir from Northwestern Middle School. I believe that Hopewell Middle School probably also has some. So that would be, I think, additional entertainment. They are always looking for those sorts of opportunities.
absolutely, and I think that the Milton Choir, the contact you gave me before, because they
Yes.
sang at our Memorial Day
Yes.
event. We had 2 young girls, and last year they were at our Christmas and Crabapple, and I'm certainly going to look to them for the holiday events this year.
And I'll just suggest, since because they are quite talented, and because it's going to be
Please.
at their school, and it's only a couple of weeks out, I think we probably need to go ahead and reach out to them, because they have a lot of festivals that are going on right now. But after our meeting, I'll make sure to circle back and just
Okay.
provide you that again.
There is something that's taking part of the drama or the music department from Milton out this year, and I forget what
they
it
have
is.
some events, I'm sure,
but
that are coming up.
they're always going out and about, I guess. So anyway,
If I can make one more suggestion, I know that the Northwestern Middle School Foundation, which is a new organization, they are planning to have an event that same day, and so it might be helpful for public safety and/or our city manager just to coordinate with those folks from a parking perspective, because I heard you mention earlier that there's been some coordination on the egress and traffic flow, and so that might be important to be aware of, because some of the activity at Northwestern Middle School that ties to that would have some impact, and it's not during Milton Roundup, but during the October 3rd event in Crabapple. So different event, but still impacts the traffic flow potentially.
Absolutely.
So I want to
Yeah.
make you guys aware of that.
okay.
And I have a final question. When I heard you talk about the Christmas tree, I was also wondering,
No, you
I know
didn't
you-
hear
you
me
said
talk
holiday.
about a Christmas tree.
we called it a Christmas tree, but nonetheless, the tall tree that I think is a deodora.
Yes, that's it.
It's a deodora. One, thank you to those that are involved, and Tina, thank you, Councilmember DeVersa, for being a part of that process. It'll be
Absolutely.
a tremendous tradition, so I'd like to acknowledge Councilmember DeVersa for her efforts. And-
Well, before you acknowledge me, it's Lisa Colley's group that's Protect Milton, and she has graciously donated this tree, and these trees are expensive and they're
Yes.
beautiful. And, I mean, it's a blessing.
It is a blessing.
I didn't know if I was at liberty
Yeah.
to say
Yes.
the
So
names,
She's
but
probably watching, wondering what
oh,
her name's going to be.
good.
So
Well,
that
I'm
was-
glad, and I wanted to mention you too, Tina,
So
because
the first acknowledgement, obviously, Councilmember DeVersa, because she's here, and also Lisa, if you're watching.
absolutely.
Thank you to
Julie.
Lisa Colley and
Thank you.
Protect Milton.
And Linda and Mark came to me and said, we're planning to do something here, and we just wanted to make you aware of it. And I think they had chatted with other council members as well. And Lisa just jumped in and said, don't spend your money. You know, it's going to be $4,000.
Oh,
We'll
yeah.
donate the tree. So
Yeah, it's
that
a-
is truly a
It's
blessing.
a very gracious donation. And I just
Absolutely.
wanted to ask, with the contest, for us maybe to all think about, is there an opportunity, instead of us paying for somebody to decorate it, I think there might be an opportunity to reach out to different organizations, volunteer organizations that might enjoy participating in a decoration that we could do with no cost, and perhaps just something to consider, as opposed to decorating it at an expense to the city.
First thing that comes to my mind, excuse me, is liability.
Well, and we can talk about that offline. I
Yeah.
think that there's some, I know that there are ways to decorate things and cover
The fire
liability.
truck reaches
Yeah, we'll
that.
absolutely, we'll certainly look at what the cost-effective
I think
ways
there's
are
some
to do
groups that
that.
I think that's a great idea, Councilmember Zondervan.
I can-
I would love to see, maybe it's an activity at the Roundup. You can buy the big balls that kids could paint, and then they could have their Christmas
There's just a
ball
lot we can
go
do.
on the tree. And that would kind of make it a neat thing, because it would be, they'd want to come by and see the tree because it had their decoration on it.
We could even hand make some things at our
I think
antique
that's,
festival.
as long as they wouldn't be blown off. The only thing I was getting quotes for was the lighting, and the cost is phenomenal.
Right, so
And-
maybe we've got some firemen that know, or city managers that know how to climb the ladder. I don't know.
And
Oh, no, you don't
And
want
equipment.
Firefighters back here. Bet you they
I bet there's a
do it.
gentleman in
Yeah,
the
two
back.
heights. I think we got it under control,
Yeah.
and yes, I think
Anyway,
we,
just some different thoughts.
we'll get some of those things.
Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
These events that Linda coordinates are, one time I was being interviewed, and they said, what is the thing you're most proud about that the city has achieved? And I had to say, this is not something that's bricks and sticks. It's really hard to say it's tangible, but the feeling of the sense of community, and that's what you feel when you attend these events. So thank you, Linda. With that said, if the staff doesn't have anything else, I'm going to conclude this meeting. If I have a motion that we adjourn.
I'll make a motion, Mayor, that we adjourn the meeting.
Second motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Diaversa, second by Councilmember Lusk.
All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Meeting adjourned, 7:18.
Linda?